My sister screamed, "You'll never touch my family again, you're trash." So I withdrew my name from the inheritance she was counting on. Hey beautiful souls. Take a second to subscribe, drop a friendly hi in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's continue the story. The hospital air smelled like bleach and broken promises when my phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Mama's name flashed across the screen, but it wasn't her voice that greeted me. "She's asking for you," my sister Deandra said, her tone flat as cardboard. "The doctors say it's time." I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mama had been fighting cancer for 8 months, but hearing those words made everything real. Too real. I grabbed my keys, still in my pajamas, and drove 45 minutes through empty streets to get to her. When I burst through those hospital doors, my clothes disheveled and tears streaming down my face, I found Mama sleeping peacefully. Deandra sat in the corner chair, scrolling through her phone, looking annoyed. "Where is everyone?" I whispered, approaching Mama's bedside. Her hand felt paper-thin in mine. "I sent them home." "False alarm," Deandra said without looking up. "The nurse said she stabilized an hour ago." Something twisted in my gut. "Then why did you call me saying it was time?" She finally met my eyes and I saw something there I'd been ignoring for years. Cold calculation. "Because Mama's lawyer is coming tomorrow morning at 9. She wanted you here for it." I should have recognized the setup then. Should have seen the trap being laid. But I was 34 years old, exhausted from working double shifts at the restaurant to help with Mama's medical bills, and too tired to read between the lines. "What's this about, Dee?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You'll find out tomorrow. Get some sleep, sister. You're going to need it." That smile haunted my dreams that night. Morning came too fast. I'd barely slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair. My neck kinked at an angle that promised a headache. Mama woke around 7, squeezing my hand weakly. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "You came." "Always, Mama. Always." By 8:45 the room filled up like we were hosting a reunion. Deandra arrived with her husband Edward and their 3 kids. My brother Terrell showed up with his fiancée Nicole. Even Daddy appeared, though he and Mama had been divorced for 15 years. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was a thin white man with kind eyes and a leather briefcase that looked older than me. He nodded respectfully to Mama before addressing the room. "Mrs. Williams asked me to discuss her estate plans while she's still coherent enough to explain her wishes," he began. "She owns the family home, valued at approximately $480,000, fully paid off. There's also a life insurance policy worth $350,000 and various savings accounts totaling $125,000. I felt everyone's energy shift. Money does that, turns family into strangers real quick. My youngest daughter Janelle, Mama's voice was stronger now, has been my primary caregiver. She's sacrificed her career, her relationships, everything to be here for me these past months." Deandra's jaw clenched. I could see her calculating. "Therefore, I'm leaving the house and 70% of my estate to Janelle. The remaining 30% will be divided between my other 2 children." The room erupted. Deandra shot to her feet, her face twisted with rage. Terrell looked shocked but stayed quiet. Daddy just shook his head, muttering something under his breath. "This is garbage," Deandra shouted. "Absolute garbage. Janelle probably manipulated you while you were weak." "That's enough," Mr. Patterson said firmly. But it wasn't enough. It was just the beginning. The accusations started immediately. Deandra cornered me in the hospital hallway, her finger jabbing toward my chest like a weapon. "You think you're slick, don't you?" Her voice echoed off the sterile walls. "Playing the devoted daughter while the rest of us have actual lives?" "I didn't ask for any of this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mama made her own choices. Choices you influenced." She stepped closer and I could smell her expensive perfume, the kind I could never afford. "While I was raising 3 children and building my business, you were here poisoning her against us." Edward appeared behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Baby, calm down. People are watching." But Deandra shrugged him off. Something feral had awakened in her, something that had maybe been sleeping our whole lives. "I don't care who's watching. This gold digging which isn't stealing our inheritance." Gold digging. The word stung more than it should have. I'd been living in a studio apartment, working 60-hour weeks, eating ramen most nights so I could afford to help with Mama's medication copays. Meanwhile, Deandra lived in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with 2 new cars in the driveway. I never asked Mama to change her will, I said quietly. I helped her because she's my mother. Because it was the right thing to do. Terrell emerged from Mama's room, his face troubled. He'd always been the peacemaker, the middle child who tried to keep everyone happy. Y'all need to lower your voices. Mama can hear you fighting. Good, Deandra spat. Maybe she'll hear sense and change this ridiculous decision. That's when I should have walked away. Should have let Mama's decision stand without explanation. But I was hurt, angry, and stupid enough to defend myself. Maybe if you'd visited more than twice in 8 months. Deandra's hand flew so fast I barely saw it coming. The slap echoed through the hallway, sharp and final. My cheek burned, but not as much as my pride. A nurse rushed over, demanding we take our drama outside. Edward grabbed Deandra's arm, pulling her toward the elevator while she screamed obscenities that made elderly patients clutch their pearls. I stood there, trembling, touching my face where her palm had connected. Terrell looked at me with something like pity, which somehow felt worse than the slap. She's just upset, he said weakly. You know how Dee gets. Yeah. I know exactly how Dee gets. I pushed past him back into Mama's room. She was crying silently, tears rolling down her gaunt cheeks. Mr. Patterson had left, but his business card sat on the bedside table like a prophecy. I'm sorry, baby, Mama whispered. I thought maybe this once they'd understand. I held her while she cried, feeling her frail body shake with sobs. This woman had given birth to 3 children, worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, survived an abusive marriage and beaten breast cancer once before. She deserved peace in her final days. What she got instead was a family war. Over the next week, things deteriorated faster than Mama's health. Deandra started a group chat with extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew, spinning a narrative where I was the villain. She sent screenshots of the will details, adding her own commentary about manipulation and elder abuse. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. How could you take advantage of your sick mother? Family is supposed to stick together. You should be ashamed. Aunt Gloria, Mama's older sister, called me directly. Janelle, baby, I know you've been there for your mama. But maybe you should consider splitting things equally? For the sake of family unity. Aunt Gloria, I didn't ask for any. I know. But think about how this looks. Deandra has 3 children to provide for. The guilt washed over me in waves. Was I wrong for accepting Mama's decision? To understand how we got here, you need to know about the summer I turned 16. That's when Deandra, then 23, borrowed $15,000 from Mama to start her catering business. She promised to pay it back within 2 years. I remember because I'd been accepted to a prestigious culinary program, but we couldn't afford the tuition. Baby, I just don't have it right now, Mama had said, her eyes apologizing. Once Dee pays me back, we'll figure something out. Deandra never paid back a single dollar. Her business flourished, but somehow there was never money for Mama. Just excuses. Things are tight this quarter. The equipment cost more than expected. Next year, I promise. Meanwhile, I went to community college instead, working nights at a diner to pay my own way. I never complained. That's just what you did, you sacrificed for family. When I was 19, I met Malcolm. He was beautiful, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. We dated for 3 years, talked about marriage, picked out names for our future children. Then his job offered him a position across the country. Come with me, he'd begged. We'll start fresh, just us. But Daddy had just left and Mama was struggling to keep the house. Terrell was away at college and Deandra was too busy with her growing family. Someone needed to be there. I can't leave her, I'd told Malcolm, watching our future crumble like stale bread. He'd looked at me with such sadness. You're going to spend your whole life taking care of everyone else, Janelle. What about taking care of yourself? He left the next month. Last I heard, he'd married someone else and had 2 kids. Sometimes late at night, I'd wonder what my life might have been. But I'd stayed. Through Mama's first cancer scare, through her divorce proceedings, through every crisis and emergency. Not because I expected payment, but because she was my mother. Now, sitting in that hospital room while she slept, I realized Malcolm had been right. Deandra's smear campaign escalated beyond family gossip. She posted on social media, carefully worded so it wasn't legally actionable, but clear enough that people knew exactly who she meant. When you sacrifice your life for family only to watch one person manipulate your dying mother for money, heartbroken doesn't even begin to describe it. Prayer warriors, I need you now. The post got 200 likes and 60 comments, most from people who didn't know me, mama, or the full story. But that didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, I was already guilty. My boss at the restaurant, Miss Wilson, pulled me aside during a shift. Janelle, honey, I saw some things online. Are you okay? I'm fine, Miss Wilson. Just family drama. She looked at me with ancient wisdom in her eyes. My mother used to say, the child who stays close catches the most blame. People always resent the one who's present. Her words offered little comfort when my phone rang again. This time it was Terrell. Janelle, we need to talk. His voice was strained. Nicole thinks. We think maybe you should consider Dee's perspective. What perspective? That I should apologize for taking care of our mother. No, just, maybe you could disclaim part of the inheritance? To keep the peace. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Keep the peace. That's rich, Terrell. Where was this energy when I was calling you both at 3 a.m. because Mama was vomiting from chemo? When I was bathing her because she was too weak to stand? When I missed my own birthday because she needed someone to drive her to radiation? Silence stretched between us like taffy. I was working, he finally said. We all have responsibilities. Yeah. We do. And I handled mine. Now Mama's handling hers by making sure I'm not left with nothing after sacrificing everything. That's not fair. Fair. The word exploded out of me. You want to talk about fair? Goodbye, Terrell. I hung up, hands shaking. The cracks in my family weren't just showing anymore. They were gaping chasms. 3 days later, Mama had a moment of clarity. The morphine had been reduced and she was more alert than she'd been in weeks. She asked everyone to leave except me. Baby, I need to tell you something, she said, gripping my hand with surprising strength. About why I made the will the way I did. Mama, you don't have to explain. Yes, I do. Before I lose the chance. She took a labored breath. When your daddy left, Deandra told me it was my fault. Said I drove him away with my nagging and my weight. He was cruel, Janelle. So cruel I wanted to die. Tears pricked my eyes. I'd never known this. You were the one who held me together. 19 years old and you became my rock. Deandra didn't visit for 6 months after the divorce. Said she couldn't bear to see me wallow in self-pity. Mama's voice cracked. But you were there every single day. I remember, I whispered. I remembered finding her crying in the bathroom, remembered cooking all her favorite foods trying to make her smile, remembered being so angry at Daddy I could taste it. And when I got sick the first time 12 years ago, Deandra sent flowers with a card. That was it. But you researched every treatment, came to every appointment, learned how to clean my port when I was too scared to look at it. Mama's eyes bore into mine. This isn't about money, baby. It's about acknowledging that love isn't equal just because blood is shared. But Mama, the family's falling apart. The family fell apart years ago. We just pretended it hadn't because pretending was easier than truth. She coughed, a wet rattling sound that terrified me. Promise me something, Janelle. Promise you won't let them bully you into giving up what's yours. I promised, Mama. But keeping that promise became harder when Deandra showed up at my apartment 2 nights later. She'd somehow gotten past the building security, and I found her waiting by my door when I came home from my shift. We need to talk, she said, her arms crossed. Edward stood behind her like a bodyguard. There's nothing to talk about. I fumbled with my keys, exhaustion making my hands clumsy. Actually, there is. I spoke with a lawyer. Edward's brother, the one who does estate litigation. He says we have grounds to contest the will based on undue influence. My stomach dropped. You're going to drag our dying mother through court? If that's what it takes to get justice, yes. Deandra's face was stone. See, the thing is, I have evidence. Text messages where you complained about money. Posts where you mentioned being stressed about bills. We can paint a picture of someone desperate enough to manipulate an elderly, sick woman. Evidence. I repeated, feeling surreal. Of me being honest about struggling financially while I gave up my life to help Mama? The court will see it our way, Edward added, speaking for the first time. His voice was smug, certain. Especially when we bring up how you isolated her from the rest of the family. I isolated her? The words came out as a shout. My neighbor's door cracked open and I peering out. She was sick. You all were too busy to visit. That's your narrative, Deandra said coolly. But we have a different one. And honestly, Janelle, you don't have the resources to fight us. I can afford a legal battle. Can you? The threat hung in the air like poison gas. She was right and she knew it. I had maybe $3,000 in savings. Legal fees would obliterate me. Think about it, Deandra continued. You could make this easy. Sign over 60% of the estate, keep 40 for yourself, and we'll all walk away happy. Nobody has to know you tried to steal from your own family. Something inside me shifted. Call it pride, call it stupidity, call it the final straw. The next morning I called Mr. Patterson. His secretary said he was booked, but when I mentioned Deandra's threats, she put me through immediately. Miss Williams, I was hoping you'd call, he said. I've already received a letter from attorney Edward Johnson indicating his intention to challenge your mother's will on behalf of his sister-in-law. Can they actually do that? Mama was completely lucid when she made these decisions. They can file a challenge, yes. Whether they'll succeed is another matter. Papers rustled on his end. But litigation is expensive and emotionally draining. I need to be honest with you. Even if we win, you'll spend significant money defending your mother's wishes. How much are we talking? Conservatively, $40,000 to $60,000 if it goes to trial. The number hit me like a freight train. I don't have that kind of money. Which is exactly what your sister is counting on, Mr. Patterson said gently. I've seen this play out dozens of times. The person who actually cared for the parent ends up being punished because they don't have resources to fight back. I sat in my tiny apartment looking at the stack of medical bills on my counter. Bills I'd paid from my own pocket when insurance wouldn't cover everything. Bills for Mama's comfort items, her special foods when she could barely eat, her medications that cost more than my weekly groceries. What do I do? Asked my voice small. That depends. How much fight do you have left? Mr. Patterson paused. Because I'll tell you what I told your mother when she was making these decisions. Sometimes the battle is worth more than the inheritance. Sometimes standing up for what's right matters more than the money. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. His words echoed in my head for hours after we hung up. I'd spent my whole life avoiding conflict, keeping the peace, putting everyone else first. Where had it gotten me? Broke, alone, and fighting with siblings who should have been my allies. Mama's condition worsened rapidly. The doctor said it was a matter of days now, maybe hours. I rushed to the hospital to find the whole family already there. Even cousins and aunts I hadn't seen in years. Deandra had orchestrated it, I realized. Made sure everyone would be present for maximum pressure. There she is, Aunt Gloria said when I walked in, her tone accusatory. The one tearing this family apart over money. Excuse me. I stopped in my tracks. Don't play innocent, Janelle. Uncle Robert stepped forward. He'd always been Deandra's favorite uncle. Dee told us everything. How you've been controlling who can visit, feeding your mother lies about the rest of the family. That's not true. My voice rose, drawing attention from nurses. I've never stopped anyone from visiting. Then why did Mama tell me I couldn't bring the kids last month? Deandra emerged from Mama's room, tears streaming down her face. Real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. You said she was too tired for visitors, remember? She had just finished a chemo session. She was literally vomiting. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And you wanted to bring 3 loud children into her room? They're her grandchildren, Deandra said, her voice breaking. She has a right to see them before she dies. The family members nodded, muttering agreement. I felt like I was in some twisted alternate reality where up was down and black was white. You know what? I said, my voice shaking. You all can believe whatever story Dee's selling. But I know the truth. I know who was here every single day. Who held Mama's hand through every treatment. Who cleaned up after her when she was too weak to make it to the bathroom. Where were all of you? We have lives, Terrell said quietly. Jobs. Families. Not everyone can just drop everything. I had a life too. The words exploded from somewhere deep inside me. I had dreams and plans and a future. But I gave it all up because someone needed to be here. The room went silent. Even Deandra looked momentarily stunned by my outburst. Then her face twisted into something ugly, something I'd never seen before on my own sister's face. You gave it up because you had nothing better, she hissed. No husband, no real career, no kids. What else were you going to do with your pathetic little life? The words landed like physical blows. Edward looked uncomfortable, like even he thought she'd gone too far. But Deandra wasn't done. At least I built something. I have a business, a family, a real life. What do you have? A studio apartment and a waitress job? You're 34 years old, Janelle, and you're still acting like you're going to magically become something special. This inheritance is probably the most money you'll ever see in your sad, wasted life. Deandra, Aunt Gloria said weakly, maybe that's... No. Deandra turned on her. Everyone wants to tiptoe around the truth? Fine. But I'm done pretending. She's been waiting for Mama to die like a vulture, counting the money, probably already planning how to spend it. Something broke inside me. Not shattered. That implies drama. This was quieter, like a thread that's been pulled too tight finally snapping. You want the money that bad? I asked, my voice eerily calm. It means that much to you? It's not about the money. It's about what's fair. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't insult both of us by pretending this is about fairness. You want to know what's really pathetic? That you can't just admit you resent me for being here. For doing what you couldn't be bothered to do. I walked into Mama's room. She was barely conscious, but her eyes opened when I sat beside her bed. Baby, she whispered. Mama, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest. I squeezed her hand gently. If changing your will would bring you peace in these final days, I'll do it. I'll give them whatever they want. I just need to know that's what you really want. Mama's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head firmly. No, baby. No. I made my decision with a clear mind and a full heart. Don't you dare let them bully you. Her grip tightened despite her weakness. Promise me, Janelle. Promise you'll stand up for yourself. Just once. Please. Outside the room, I could hear Deandra's voice, still spinning her narrative to anyone who'd listen. I heard her tell someone I'd probably already forged checks from Mama's account. Heard her describe me as a manipulative leech who preyed on sick old women. And something inside me just crystallized. I kissed Mama's forehead. I promise. When I emerged from the room, I looked directly at Deandra. You know what? You're right about one thing. I have wasted my life. I wasted it believing that family meant something. That loyalty and sacrifice would be recognized and appreciated. Janelle, Terrell started. I'm not finished. My voice was steel. I'm done. Done defending myself. Done explaining, done begging for basic respect. You want to take me to court, D? Go ahead. Spend your money on lawyers. Drag this out for years if that's what makes you happy. Oh, I will, she sneered. And when I win. But here's the thing you didn't count on, I continued, pulling out my phone. Mr. Patterson explained something interesting to me. Mama's will gives me the authority to refuse the inheritance altogether. I can disclaim it completely. Deandra's face went pale. What? If I refuse my portion, it doesn't automatically go to you and Terrell. It goes to the alternate beneficiaries Mama named. Want to know who that is? I pulled up the email Mr. Patterson had sent me. The American Cancer Society and a local women's shelter. Every single penny. You wouldn't dare, Edward said, stepping forward. Watch me. I met Deandra's eyes. You called my life pathetic? Said I'm nothing but a vulture waiting for Mama to die? Fine. Let's see what happens when this vulture flies away. Every dollar you thought you were fighting for? Gone. To charity. Mama died 4 days later at 6:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was holding her hand. Deandra had gone home the night before, probably to meet with her lawyer. Terrell was asleep in the waiting room. Only me and Mama, like it had been so many times before. Her last words were barely a whisper. Thank you, baby girl. For everything. Then she was gone and I was an orphan at 34 years old. The funeral was exactly as horrible as you'd expect. Deandra played the grieving daughter perfectly, sobbing loudly, making sure everyone saw her pain. She didn't acknowledge me at all. Neither did most of the family. I sat in the front row alone while everyone else clustered together like I had some contagious disease. After the burial, Mr. Patterson pulled me aside. Have you made your decision? You have 30 days to disclaim the inheritance. I looked across the cemetery at Deandra, who was surrounded by relatives offering comfort. Saw her glance at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Thought about all the years I'd sacrificed, all the moments I'd never get back. Yes, I said. I'm disclaiming everything. Are you sure? That's nearly $1 million you're walking away from. I'm sure. And I was. Because Deandra was right about one thing. I did need to start living for myself. And keeping that money, fighting that battle would chain me to this family forever. Would mean years of legal fights, holidays ruined, relationships destroyed. Some prices are too high even for $1 million. I signed the papers that afternoon. Within a week, the American Cancer Society and the Women's Shelter each received checks for over $400,000. The charity representatives called to thank me, confused but grateful. Deandra found out 3 days later. She called my phone 17 times. Left voicemails that started angry, turned desperate, ended with her screaming that I'd ruined her life. That she'd been counting on that money for her kids' college funds, for expanding her business, for her future. I listened to one. Just one. Then I blocked her number. Blocked Terrell's too when he called asking how I could be so selfish. Selfish. After everything. I sold most of Mama's belongings, what wasn't claimed by the estate or donated. Found a photo album from when we were kids before everything got complicated. Deandra and I, maybe 5 and 12, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. Two sisters who'd once loved each other. I cried for 3 days straight. Not for the money. For the sister I'd lost. For the family that never really existed except in my hopeful imagination. For Mama, who'd tried to protect me even in death but couldn't fix what had been broken for years. 3 months later, I got a job offer in another state. Better pay, fresh start, nobody who knew my story. I took it without hesitation. On my last night in town, I drove past the house where I'd grown up. Someone else lived there now. The estate had sold it to settle final debts. Lights glowed warm in the windows. Kids' bikes on the porch. It looked happy. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Janelle. It was Terrell. His voice sounded hollow. Dee's marriage is falling apart. Edward blamed her for losing the inheritance, said she destroyed the family over greed. She's not doing well. Why are you telling me this? Because she's our sister. And I think she finally understands what she did. She wants to talk to you. To apologize. I sat there in my car parked across from my childhood home and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just empty. Tell her I forgive her, I said finally. But I'm done, Terrell. I'm done sacrificing myself for people who'll never appreciate it. Tell her I hope she finds peace. Tell her I'm going to find mine. I hung up, blocked that number too, and drove away. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes family isn't worth the price of your soul. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from everything you've ever known. I did. And even though I cried myself to sleep for months after, even though I still sometimes dream about Mama and wake up reaching for a phone to call her, even though I see Deandra's face in every crowd and feel that old ache of missing my sister, I'd make the same choice again. Because I finally learned what Mama was trying to teach me. Sometimes the only person you can save is yourself. And sometimes that has to be enough. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your own experiences with family betrayal in the comments below. You're not alone. Sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Remember, you deserve to be valued, respected, and loved. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next story.